Hello and welcome to this Insight series with me, Chris Fordham, for the Light Review. In this podcast, I had a chat with Paul Nulty, founder of Nulty Lighting, award-winning consultancy, talking about retail. Retail is a great subject. I love retail, but it has had a massive change in the last few years. So we had a think about the future and also some hints and tips about how to approach this topic, because things really have changed. Some things for the better, some things for the worse. Sit back, relax, and hope you enjoy the podcast. So, hello, Paul. Thanks for joining us today. This has been a really weird series with a few surprises. So, in the shifting sands of retail, what type of projects have you been involved in? And in general, how do you approach this arena of lighting design, which has seen a seismic change in the last few years? Do you have any advice for the budding lighting designer, for example?
That's a lot of questions in one. So, I mean, we do, an enormous amount of retail design, which can largely be split into, I guess, 2 or 3 camps. You've got department store retail lighting design, which is very different to sort of boutique retail design. And then you've got sort of shopping mall retail design for the actual kind of amenity and landlord areas. And we do a lot of both, or all 3, I should say. And over the years, we've worked with brands that range from Victoria's Secret, fashion, lingerie. We've done things with people like Jimmy Choo, with Kurt Geiger. We've worked with people like TK Maxx at the lower end. At the real top end, we've worked with Harrods and Selfridges and Liberty and Galeries Lafayette, so big department stores. And everything in between. We've even worked with makeup brands such as MAC, Estee Lauder, and Charlotte Tilbury. And then in food retailing, we've worked with everybody from Morrison's through to kind of Waitrose and other food retailers. So I guess we probably know our stuff. We've probably got a decent amount of experience on our portfolio of working on retail projects. So that probably answers your first question in terms of our sort of experience. Your second question, which was, I think, how do we go about approaching retail lighting design? Forgive me, I don't know how long I've got, so I could be here a while.
15 minutes, 20 minutes. Knock yourself out, Paul. It's fine. Right. Wax lyrical.
I'll try and keep it short and sweet, which is very unlike me. Look, retail lighting, the one thing as a lighting designer you cannot lose sight of is, retailers are in this to make money. And I think that has to be a fundamental starting point of every design, because as designers, we can kind of get, sometimes caught up in the kind of existential questions about, why am I and what is it? And
that's deep. That's very enlivening, deep straight away. It's a good sign.
But, I think you've got to be truthful about it. Retailers are not in it for a hobby. So whatever you do as a lighting designer, you got to add value. Now, whether that is energy reduction, people like TK Maxx, they wanted a 20% energy reduction. We gave them a 40% energy reduction. Whether it is about shifting more product, because ultimately retailers are in it to sell product, whatever that is. It's ultimately about helping them make more money. And that's as simple as that. So you have to start with that mindset. And I think when you get your head around that, you start to really think about, why am I specifying certain product? Why am I using it in a certain way? Why am I creating a kind of ambiance or an environment or an experience for the guest or the customer in that particular instance? Because it is ultimately about, helping people part with cash. What's really interesting in the market these days, of course, is it's not necessarily directly helping customers part with cash. Back 20 years ago, it was very much about getting the customer to come in, select a product, go to the cash desk, part with the cash, and leave. And it was a very transactional experience. It's not now, because we've got clicks, we've got online retailing, and our role as lighting designers, because we don't work in the online world, not yet anyway, not until we start getting involved with Meta, which is a whole different conversation. I think it's about creating an experience, because a lot of the time, 7, 8, 9 times out of 10, people are going to come in store now for their experience and probably go home and then order online. So it's very much about experiential design, which really kind of plays into the hands of the lighting designer, because as lighting designers, we're all about, the primary sense of sight. So we're all about creating wonderful visual experiences, but we have to do that against the backdrop of knowing it's still about getting a customer into a store, having that experience, experiencing the brand or the product, and then, getting them to buy into that brand. And we also live in a world where there is so much competition going on. I can buy an Apple phone or a Microsoft phone or a Google phone, for example, that we've got to get people in and get them to buy into the brand. So part of our journey that we go on as part of that design journey is about really understanding the brand messaging, the connection that the brand wants to have, the emotional connection that the brand wants to have with its customers or its guests. And I use the word guest because more and more retailers are borrowing from the hospitality world. So you go in store, you're no longer a customer, you are a guest of theirs, and you come in and you experience their space, whether it's sitting on the bleachers and learning about how a product goes because you're there for a seminar, whether it's because you've gone to see a catwalk show in a space, for example. So it's very much about understanding the brand and the messaging and the emotional connection, and then starting to use light to play into that. And to sort of reinforce it. So it's really important. And I think we're seeing light become really important. We're seeing sound become really important. We're even seeing smell now become really kind of key parts of the journey and the experience. So it's an interesting time. It's an interesting time because we're seeing this sort of emergence of a greater level of importance placed upon design. And yet retailers are struggling. The high street is struggling. So there's less money to spend. So that's also kind of fun. Sorry.
You touched on so many interesting topics there, because I love retail design. I've done loads of shops and stores and things. And it was a very quick turnaround. They talk the same language as you because they're in the business of selling goods to people, aren't they? And you could always have a good conversation around the look and feel and creating contrast and spaces and things. But I did start to worry when Amazon is such a big thing, isn't it? Let's face it. And I can't stand shopping. I like doing lighting for shopping centres and retail, but I can't stand shopping. I think they should just have a corner where they show the football or something for the blokes who are just with the wives saying, please, can you hurry up? But I'm just thinking now, do these customers understand that this journey is obviously changing? And I was of the opinion that perhaps it's just the shop front is almost a theatre for them to get across their brand identity and for that they're trying to show. So you go there almost to be part of their brand and then go and buy it online, because it which does require a good designer, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Or is that just in my head?
No. You're spot on. And there are some retailers that are doing it phenomenally well. Nike, the brand experience. We've worked on projects with Nike where they weren't selling anything. They're pop-up stores, but it's just actually a pop-up experience. You couldn't actually buy a product in there, but so it was all about ordering online and getting it delivered. Nike are really, and Apple as well do it very, very well. It's all about experiencing the product, experiencing the brand, buying into it, and they're fine if you go and buy it online. The truth is, those that aren't evolving, and there are plenty of brands out there that are not evolving quickly enough, they're falling by the wayside. And for me, one of the greatest examples I can give is Debenhams, which has died a death. Why would you have gone to Debenhams to go and buy a Mulberry handbag? In a Mulberry concession in Debenhams, when you can go to the Mulberry store and you can get looked after with a glass of champagne and, fawned over by the staff. And, it's all about that wonderful experience. Why on earth would you go and do it in Debenhams? Why would I go into a little tiny concession, makeup concession for Bobbi Brown or MAC or something, when I can go into the MAC store or the Bobbi Brown store? So, it's the brands that are not evolving with that experience are really, really struggling. And there are so many examples of brands that have died a death over the last 5-10 years and are continuing to struggle. And the ones who know how to change it up, look at Ikea now. Ikea are opening experience stores only. You buy everything, you go into the store, you have a look at your bed or your wardrobes or whatever. You don't go and buy it, you don't take it home with you. you now just order it online and it gets delivered to your home. So there are brands that are evolving to encompass, I suppose, the overall experience. And lighting is a massive part of that. It's still a small part of it because it still has to be about the interior design and the architecture and the space planning and understanding how a store actually operates. Do you need certain Instagram moments? What is the customer journey around the store, and how does light sort of enhance that and reinforce it? And that's a great point. Instagrammable moments, right? Lighting design is having to change for Instagram. I've got my phone here, right? If I take what's called a flatty, a picture straight down, because I've got a lovely pair of shoes that are down. What I don't want are lots of shadows being cast by my phone onto the product that I'm trying to take a photograph of. Or if I'm trying to take a selfie, do I want lights casting shadows on my face? So as lighting designers, we have to really take on board the way a customer or a guest is going to experience that space, use that space, shop that space, and adjust the lighting to it. So it's no longer good enough just to do a track and spot scheme where you could just spotlight all the products and that was it. You've really got to get your head around even fitting rooms. How much shadow or flat light do I need onto it? If it's lingerie, it's got to be really soft, and so that I'm not showing every lump and bump of a body. Got to flatter. So there are so many subtle nuances to what we do as lighting designers now when it comes to retail. It's super exciting. I mean, it keeps us in a job, right? Which is the main thing.
Oh, absolutely. And I suppose that leads me on to another question is, SLL guides, is there any place to ever use those? They're good for the nuts and bolts, okay. But as you said about the fitting rooms and things, I think they note it there. But I don't suppose much of those comes into your vernacular.
Look,
sustainability
yeah, sorry,
as well. Is sustainability, is that something that your customers are asking for you? And how do you build it in? Has that model changed, where we all know that in the past it was a case of it's quite a quick turnaround? The shops are going to change their design for sure in a few years, 3 or 4 years. So have they taken that into consideration on that journey with yourself when you're proposing design solutions?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. Things like guidelines. Look, just to be marginally controversial here, I think all guidelines are complete nonsense. Whether it's for offices or, I'm a believer that the rules are meant to be broken. I think absolutely. Things like the guidelines are there as a good benchmark. But if you're a designer that's relying on what the guidelines tell you, then you're basically creating a tick box exercise, and you're just ticking, it's 400 lux, it's 100 lux, it's whatever. And that's just complete nonsense, because you're not then taking into account the brand, the use, the people, the overall interior design. Is it light? Is it bright? What's the mood? What's the emotion? All of the guidelines sort of take out the emotional connection that light gives you. And for me, and maybe it's my theatrical background, the best thing about light, the biggest power light has, is the ability to emotionally connect people with their space. And all of the guidelines suck the life out of that, frankly. So I think, as a good lighting designer, you should be aware of the guidelines. Yes, you should be aware of what they're recommending. And then you should throw it away and bend it and twist it and make it work for the right design for, it should be the right design for the right job, basically. So that's my general view on guidelines. I think we should be designing with them in mind, but then very much sort of contextualizing it for the people and the emotional connection that we want. So that's deals with that one. As far as sustainability goes, it's really difficult in retail, because all retail is it's a huge topic, particularly in fast fashion, and coming up with sort of more sustainable clothing. But then if you ask a retailer, if you go into retail and say, do you know what? You should spend another 30% on the cost of your capex, because this light fitting is more sustainable. They ain't going to spend it. I can tell you that now.
Absolutely.
So they're not. They will look at LED. They want low energy, because ultimately that directly affects their bottom line, because it directly affects their energy bills. And energy bills are not getting lower; they're very much getting higher. So anything we can do to help retailers reduce energy consumption and therefore electricity bills is great. But if it's the difference between using an aluminium heatsink or a magnesium heatsink, because one's slightly more sustainable, they're not going to care, frankly. And that's the reality, because it's a 3-year design cycle for most stores. If you're lucky, you're able to think 5 years ahead. beyond 5 years, no retailer is going to even look at it. So they want immediate payback. And that's a real challenge, because as designers, we want to use super high quality product, with the best CRI, the most efficient output. And sometimes there is a compromise. And I think we as designers, not artists, have to accept that there is a design compromise to be made, because we are designing ultimately for the best interests of that retailer, whoever it is. That's something we've got to consider. And that's life.
No, it goes without saying, to be honest. I remember dealing with a large supermarket chain, and they asked me, that round circle in the ceiling giving you light, is that going to be any different to the other round circle that costs half the price? And I said, well, there are obviously advantages, environmental advantage, sustainability, but he said, I just want the cheap one, please. I was like, oh, yeah. God, okay. Yeah, and you can't argue with that, because it doesn't have a great deal of difference at certain parts of the market, certain parts of the store as well.
Yeah, I mean, what's really difficult, and there is very little research out there that can point to increased sales if you've got a slightly better CRI. We know anecdotally, of course, in makeup, you can, if you've got a better CRI, you're likely to have less returns. We've worked on projects with makeup brands where we actually developed or in partnership a specific LED chip for beauty retailing, because it was better for skin tone, it was better for pigment going on top.
R9, is that high R9 value?
It's very high. It's very high, but it's actually slightly skewed as well on the towards the pinker end of the spectrum. We did it with Zagato. It's no secret. Go have a look on our blog post. I'm sure on our blog there's loads of stuff about it. But it's an LED chip specifically for beauty retailing, and actually we use a combination of that and a second type of LED chip to maximize that. So we know anecdotally actually that particular makeup brand had significantly less returns of foundation whenever color matching. We know anecdotally that there are less returns on fashion garments, but there's very little research. We've got a couple of projects where we know, where we changed the lighting, sales went up 10%. We've got another project that was up 18%. I can't tell you who, because brands don't like to give that information away.
No.
We've got a little bit of information that says if you improve your lighting, you will increase your sales. But generally in the marketplace, there's very little research that says good quality light will add this level of value to your bottom line. And really, that's what retailers want ultimately. They want to know, if I do spend double the amount on that circle in the ceiling, what am I going to get for that return on that investment? Yeah. And an intelligent retailer will say, okay, well, am I going to save energy? Okay, my electricity bill is this, so I can offset that cost against that. That makes sense. Am I going to add to footfall? Am I going to add to the customer experience? And that's the challenge. When we're selling a narrative, when we're selling a story, when we're selling our design to the client, that's what we've got to be good at as designers. To really get them to buy into it.
There's certainly a marketing element to sustainability now, even though, I mean, let's face it, we have to be pragmatic about it, but people want to buy products that are more sustainable. So perhaps that's something for the future that will benefit the planet and our industry for something.
Sure.
So just my last question is, given what you said about, and it's really quite a positive story, how you're painting it. I hope it's true, but brands requiring lighting designers to really tell their story and to sell their brand in their stores. Because let's face it, there's a hell of a lot of stores out there, hell of a lot of outlets. And what would you replace them with? And they're nice. It's nice to see them on the high street, isn't it? It draws people in. So if that's what they're using them for, it is good. But how about this new idea of going in with your phone, and the phone allows you to navigate the store, to tell you where the things are that you want? Is that something you've come across, or
that's been around for years? That's been around
because I've not really
years, 10 years maybe.
I haven't really, because it's just it's a bit more of a pain up the bum, isn't it?
Well, look, here's the thing, right? Again, depends on the retailer, right? If you're Tesco's and you've got a huge estate Other supermarkets do exist, by the way. If you're a big supermarket retailer and you've got a big estate, you've got a big team of people that can, set that up. So every time they re-merchandise, put the toothpaste in aisle 3 rather than aisle 5. They can then adjust the software accordingly so that you can track your toothpaste and you know exactly where to go. If you've got the people that can do that, if you've got the people that can data harvest, obviously you can get light fittings with numerous sensors and RFID detectors in there. If you've got a company that knows how to harvest that data and use it, then it's fine. But 95 or more % of retailers haven't got the people that know how to use it. So it's great that I can pitch in, we really think you should have these detectors so you can heat map the store and you know where people are going to walk in and look at and you know where people dwell. Of course, but if they're never going to use that data, then they're just spending money on something that is the emperor's new clothes. So I think, again, it's about, as lighting designers, really understanding the brand and the people who manage that brand, also understanding people like the visual merchandisers. Are they an educated team that knows how to change the lights? Because I forever walk into department stores and see lights lighting the floor, which frustrates the hell out of me, rather than mannequins and display. So I think, as far as technology goes, control systems, do you really need dimming controls in a retail store? You probably don't most of the time. Occasionally there will be. You might need dimming in a fitting room. You might need dimming in the store windows. But the majority of the time, you don't need it across the main floors. It's very easy as lighting designers, I think, to sort of disappear up our own derriere at times and think that, we need to put this in and this in because it's all great and the latest, piece of kit. But the truth is, it's our job to really get into the heads and the minds of our clients and understand how they work, how they operate, and whether they need that technology. And 9 times out of 10 they don't. And that's again the truth of it, I think. And it is again about helping clients maximize their profitability, which means if it means they're spending less money on technology and it works for them, then that's our role. To touch on something completely different, which you did sort of mention there about, the need for that experiential design. Look, the high street is changing and it ain't going back to what it was. My local high street, I think 60% of the stores, 50% of the stores are empty. And it's really sad to see, big stores like Next have pulled out, Gap have pulled out. It's a real sad thing. And I think if I had to, if I had a crystal ball and predict what's going to happen, I think we're going to see a huge explosion of F&B, retail kind of food and beverage experiences. I think you're going to find that your local town is going to have to sort of redevelop its sort of master planning and its external spaces. I think you're going to get a lot more food and beverage exterior spaces for people to go hang out in. I think you are going to get a reduction in retail, traditional retail units. I think department stores are going to shrink and become experiential as well, which means John Lewis no longer needs multiple floors. That you might take one floor and you go in, you place your order and it gets delivered at home. I think you'll find that there will be major retail hubs. I think you're going to find like big city centres, the big shopping malls like Westfield or Oxford Street, Bond Street. I think you find, the centre of Birmingham, they're going to have a bit of a renaissance because people will travel in to major retail hubs and they'll go shopping for the day and it'll be a whole experience that they go for. I think out of town, if you happen to live somewhere like Guildford or Maidstone or Woking or I think they're going to really shrink and I feel sorry for them. They're going to have to reinvent themselves, and I think it's an interesting time because those high streets are dying. The only way I think they're going to be reinvented is if the overall customer journey is from parking your car or getting off the bus or the train, walking up the local high street, that whole experience has to change. And developers, retailers, landlords are really going to have to think about that. And that's a conversation way bigger than lighting. But as we move to a 24-hour society, lighting is going to play such a key role in that. So post-COVID world, that's my prediction.
I think that is an excellent way to wrap it up. There's loads of nuggets in there, isn't there? So it's been really interesting talking to you, and thankfully you answered the question before I asked it, so that was really useful. So thanks very much for your time today. Excellent to talk to you, and to everyone out there, don't forget to hit like and share if you like what you saw. Ta-ra.